Hello and welcome back. It's episode 5 here today. Hope you're well. And today's episode of my podcast was from March. It's episode 5, and it was with the one, the only, the Doctor Neil Fox here on YouTube. I hope you enjoy it. Hope you like, subscribe. I'll see you for a quick wrap up of the video, and yeah, just enjoy the interview with Dr. Fox. And learn, please. Thank you. Bye.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Chatterbox podcast with me, Ben Lister. And hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Chatterbox podcast. 5 episodes, that's a lot. We've had a lot of big guests. So let's crack on, shall we? In previous episodes, we had guests. First of all, we travelled to Ivens to meet poet Richard Harries, then drove back to Hull to meet the club promoter Andy Yo-Yo. And then we spoke to my friend Paula Cayley about her cancer journey. Last time we travelled to the south in Hampshire to meet journalist Alan Hyde, but today we are staying down south to meet a broadcasting legend and a good friend of mine. And he's good friends with my previous guest on my Ben Lister podcast radio show. It's the legendary from Pop Idol and all different radio stations, host of the Pepsi chart. It's the one, the only, the Doctor, Neil Fox. Hello, Neil. Welcome along.
Hey, Ben. Hello there. Very nice to be on. And yeah, thanks for getting in contact.
You're very welcome. It's an honour, sir.
Well, it's always nice to speak to other people that, love radio and love doing it. It's something I've always enjoyed doing ever since I left. Well, when I was at university, I sort of got into university radio. That's what got me into it to start with, really. And then I'd listened to a lot of stuff in America, and I kind of decided that I wanted to be a broadcaster. I wanted to be a DJ, and so finally managed to make my dream come true at a little radio station in Worcester in the Midlands called Radio Ivan. That's where I started my life. But ever since then through obviously from then, and then I went to Radio Luxembourg and Capital Radio for 17 years and Magic for 10 years, and where we are now at Nation Radio. Being on the air is always an exciting thing. Every day is different. It's always live. It's always fun. Who knows what's going to happen? That's part of the joy of live radio. Never always goes quite as you planned. And no, it's always nice to speak to other people as well who enjoy it. It's a brilliant medium, and it will never change.
Yeah, on my previous podcast, I had a guy called Dan Murphy.
Yeah, and who does Dan work for? Who does Dan work for?
He worked for Viking for a bit and Capital and Kerrang.
Fair enough. Okay, all good stations, you see, all good stations.
Yeah,
so many different. That's certainly something that's massively changed since I got into radio. Was how many different radio stations there are now, and of course the way you can listen to radio stations. It just used to be on the radio broadcast. Then of course started to have internet. Now of course through your apps, smart speakers. But at the end of the day, good radio is good radio, and people, it's a bit like TV shows. There are zillions of different TV shows you can watch, but you tend to watch the really big ones tend to get watched by a lot of people because they're pretty good.
That's good. 5 questions today about your broadcast career, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Let's go for it. Let's begin. Question 1. Where did you start your broadcast career?
Well, I guess it really started at Bath University, where I was doing a management degree, and I'd just come back from spending 9 months in America, in Atlanta, where I'd heard lots of really amazing American radio. This was sort of early 80s. It was very different from the kind of British radio we had at the time, which was a bit slow and dull in comparison, I'll be honest. And I wanted to do the American style radio. But yeah, university was where I cut my teeth and made my first demo tapes, and then I managed to get, I suppose, my first real job where I got paid for being a DJ was at Radio Ivan, which is a small radio station that doesn't exist anymore in Worcester in the Midlands, where I had a lot of freedom and had a lot of fun and worked very hard for very little money, but it didn't matter because I was doing what I loved.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And when we had Stephanie Hurst on, she told me the story because she covered for you a couple of times on the Pepsi chart, was it, I believe?
Yeah, she did. As Hursty, yep, I'd known Hursty quite a long time from Key 103 in Manchester, and yeah, really good DJ. She still is, and what a journey she has been on, I've got to be honest. But we're still good friends, and it's really lovely, actually. And yeah, a great jock then, great jock now.
Yeah, I've had her on my previous podcast. She's one of my heroes because I used to listen to her at Capital 105 growing up.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, no. Look, she is. It's interesting, you know, when when you've known someone in a sort of a previous incarnation of themselves, you know, as a sort of Hursty, as I knew him then, but you know, she's made an amazing journey, really. And the great thing is, you know, just loves radio, right? So she loves radio as much now as she ever did, and thank God she's still broadcasting and doing a really great job.
Yeah, brilliant. She is. Question 2, who were your inspirations in broadcasting growing up?
Well, weirdly, when I was a kid, I didn't ever really dream of being a DJ because I just wasn't something I ever thought I would do. Not because I didn't like it, but because how on earth would you get into it? I just used to listen to people on, I guess, Radio 1 when I was a really young kid, sort of, you know, Tony Blackburn and those guys growing up, and then Noel Edmonds. But I suppose really, if you said who did I really start listening to properly, it was when I was in America and I started listening to a lot of American DJs. So there was a really incredible radio station in New York called Z100 who launched an amazing radio show called the Z Morning Zoo, and they were the people that started Zoo Radio, having a team of people and funny voices, and they were hysterical and they were brilliant, and still the best ever Zoo format program, which but we never got it anywhere near as good as the Americans. There was another guy in Los Angeles called Rick Dees, who was a brilliant morning DJ. If you listen to Rick Dees back in the 80s, you'd suddenly realize where Steve Wright got an awful lot of his radio show from. That's not saying that Steve Wright didn't do it absolutely brilliantly. He did, but he did his version of what Rick Dees was doing in the morning on, he worked at a radio station called Kiss FM Los Angeles. That was still an awesome radio station. So I guess listening to some of those American guys really were my radio heroes. Scott Shannon, Ross Britton, these were the guys that did this thing called the Z Morning Zoo. So it's probably the Americans more than the Brits. But then when I was getting into radio and I was on the air, I was listening to obviously people like Steve Wright in the afternoon did a really great radio show. You know, there were people as a kid growing up, Kenny Everett was clearly just brilliantly inventive and fantastic. And then I got to work with him at Capital Radio, such a really fabulously lovely guy and such an amazing radio talent. I suppose some of those sort of personality, in inverted commas, DJs were the people I really used to enjoy listening to. And I suppose to start with, go on.
Did you know Chris Tarrant then?
Well, obviously, when I started at Capital, Chris had just been recently started. I think he started in the May of 1987 doing the breakfast show, and I joined there at the end of September. So, you know, Chris was a TV star as a kid growing up that I was watching do Tiswas. And that was a really, really famous program. And he'd never been a DJ until my boss at Capital, Richard Parker, they decided he might be a really interesting choice as a breakfast DJ. And he became a brilliant breakfast DJ, really funny, you know, so clever and so witty. He was a brilliant breakfast DJ and obviously helped transform Capital Radio because, you know, everyone around London and the Southeast wanted to listen to that breakfast show. It was funny and it was compelling. So, so CT's still a good friend to this day, which is lovely.
One of my inspirations is the great Tony Blackburn as well. I don't know if you ever had the pleasure of meeting him.
Yeah, well, I worked a lot with Tony because when I joined Capital Radio, they had launched this weekend service called Capital Gold, and then it became a full-time thing, you know, 7 days a week. And obviously Tony was working for Capital Gold. So, so I've known Tony, well, a long time, probably at least 30 odd years from then. And I remember many years ago, Tony taking me in his car very excitedly, got one of the first ever sat navs in Britain in his car. He'd imported it from America, loved all that kind of technology. And he wanted to show me how this thing worked. So we went for a spin round the block. And when you'd never seen sat nav, you kind of went, wow, this is amazing. But no, you know, the legendary Tony Blackburn, I mean, that voice, I mean, when you talk to him about the early days of radio, it's hysterical because you have to remember from the pirate radio days to when he was on Radio 1, you know, his breakfast audience every day was 22 million people. But let's be honest, it was the only pop music radio station that you could listen to at the time, apart from Radio Luxembourg, which only worked in the evenings between sort of 7 and 10. So you kind of had a bit of a monopoly, but it just shows that there was a big demand for people to hear some great pop music. And so, yeah, that was after Radio 1 was born in 1967. So, yeah, lovely guy, really nice. And the lovely thing about Tony is Tony just loves doing radio, right? So, you know, it's very easy to do the Tony Blackburn, and some people take the mickey out of him. But I tell you what, he's as passionate now as he ever was doing radio, and he still sounds fantastic. Awesome.
He's had his jab as well, I've seen on the Facebook.
Yeah, well, do you know, weirdly, I had mine as well. I had mine a couple of weeks ago. Had my first one, anyway.
Yeah. Question 3. What is your favourite part about the job?
Well, I guess the wonderful thing about radio is, okay, if you love music, I get to play music for 3 hours every day. So that's great. But I think the real thing about radio is it's all about connection. You know, I'm here. I used to be in a big studio, but now since lockdown, I'm sitting in what is effectively a shed in my garden that's become my studio. And, you know, for so many people around the country, broadcasters, we've moved out of the big radio buildings and our sort of big, beautiful studios into homemade small studios. And thank God there's some amazing technology around that's let us do that. Otherwise it would have been impossible. So, yeah, I think the thing that's amazing is how you connect with people. You know, I've always liked doing live radio. I do a live radio show every day, my big ride home now on Nation. And I'm there between 4 and 7 in my shed. People are in their cars, they're in their homes, they're, you know, lying in their bath, they're doing whatever. The great thing about radio is, you know, I'm doing my thing and they could be doing a million different things, but we're somehow connected. And we're connected through. It's why, you know, I'm not really a fan of too much recorded radio and voice track radio, because you lose that connection with people. It becomes not real. And I think there's something about being live on the radio. It's what radio's always done so well, is connects people fundamentally. You know, whether you're a funny DJ or an informative DJ or a muso DJ or, you know, just a very simple basic DJ, what you're doing is you kind of keep people company, and you entertain them in many different ways, but people have you there because there are a lot of lonely people out there, and, you know, sometimes having the radio on is just great company. And now, of course, there are so many different radio stations. You can find whatever kind of music you want to listen to, or speech radio or news radio. There's so much choice out there, which is amazing. So there's going to be something that you love, and they're going to be, you know, I've always thought that radio stations have like a personality. So, you know, when we're on Capital, you know, Capital in its really big heydays in the 90s, when it was probably literally one of the biggest, most influential radio stations in the world, you know, it had a real personality. When you turned it on, you knew what you were going to get. And if you liked what it was offering, then you would have it on and have it as part of your life all the time. It's a bit like having a friend. You know, you choose your friends because you like hanging out with them and you like spending time with them and you like their company. And it's a bit like a radio station. So, you know, if you like Nation, it's great. If you like Heart or Capital or Absolute or Virgin or LBC, whatever, you like the kind of station that fits in maybe with your style of life and your personality. So, yeah, I think, you know, the nice thing about being on the radio is the cliche of you are people's friend on the radio is very true, because a lot of people, you know, people don't listen to the radio in a big group like they often watch TV. You listen to the radio normally kind of on your own, but while you're doing other things. So it's just all about company. And I think that's why I've always loved it. It's live. You don't know what's going to happen. Things always go wrong. You often cock up, you hit the wrong button, a record stops, something unexpected happens. Who knows? Something every day will go not quite to plan. Because you're live, you just got to keep going. And that's great.
One of my favourite radio stations is, I don't know if you know it, I sometimes listen to LBC and Mr. Ferrari.
Right. Well, you know, Nick Ferrari in the morning is a legendary breakfast talk radio host now. And he's extremely good at what he does. And it's to be on a talk station, I think it's really tough. You know, when we get a bit tired, or if your brain's suddenly gone fuzzy, you can put a record on. They can't do that. They got to keep talking. So it's no, LBC has become a really enormous radio station, and certainly over the last few years with Brexit and obviously then with the pandemic and everything going on, people have been really listening to their radios, whether it's music radio, but I think news radio and talk radios had a really last few years, because people want to hear other people's opinions about these really big issues.
I listen to
Who else do you listen to?
I listen to talk radio because I listen to a bloke on there called Mike Graham.
Yeah, okay.
And
so you like talk more than music radio?
I like talk radio, the Rupert Murdoch owned one at News.corp in London. And I also like, because they have Matt Dolan on there, James Whale.
Yeah.
And all them legends. I listen to Matt Dolan quite a bit.
Okay.
I did used to listen to...
Look, the great thing is... Go on.
I did used to listen to a bloke on there called Dan Wootton.
Yep.
But now he's gone to that UK 24 thing with Andrew Neil.
Okay. Yeah, no, Dan, because he was, Dan Wootton was a Sun journalist. He used to sort of run the sort of bizarre column and what have you. So knew his showbiz, knew his entertainment, that is for sure. I went on his show a few times. Very nice fella.
Yeah. Question 4. How has COVID affected your life and line of work?
Well, I guess like everyone, it's affected my life because we've all had to stay inside pretty much. We haven't been going out doing the normal things. I mean, my life was often about meetings in town, whether it's TV things or radio things. I used to do a lot of voiceovers, and obviously it's been very hard to do those in the same way. It's changed my life, and I guess what was your home has now become your workplace, and I think we've all found that. So it's interesting. Someone said to me the other day, people keep talking about working from home. He said, actually, what we should call it is actually living at work now, because I think it's slightly true that our homes have become our workplaces. So it's very hard to make work. Home was a place you used to come home to from work, and you could leave it all outside. Now I think it's probably hard for a lot of people to actually relax at home, because you're spending your life, well, doing interviews at home, working at home, radio station at home. My wife's a yoga teacher, so she teaches sort of 3 classes a day from home. My kids were at home, it was school suddenly for them. So our whole house was, as people have found, they suddenly got crowded, and it's your home hasn't been the sort of relaxing sanctuary that maybe it was before. So it's definitely changed. In terms of work, look, I'm not going off to a lovely studio anymore. And you forget sometimes how nice going to work is, because it's not just about doing the work, it's about the people at work and the conversations you have with people at work and the relationships you have with people at work. I suppose chewing the fat, passing the time of day, seeing what's going on, silly conversations when you're by the water cooler or grabbing a cup of coffee. It's all those little bits that make us as human beings. I think we're sociable creatures. So not having people around, different people around to just chat to and have a little, just a joke with, or I don't know, just see what they're up to. It's kind of weird. And I think it's going to be so nice when we get back to be able to go out and just have those conversations with people. The sort of the silly things, the really irrelevant things that, you might not really think of, but you suddenly realize now what makes days and makes relationships really interesting. So I think it's, I'm sure I've been lucky. I've got one daughter who's at university now, and she's been able to be at uni. She's in her 2nd year, so she's been in a house with friends, and so at least she's had some kind of experience, as a 19-year-old should at uni, sort of having some fun. At least it's locked down, but with some other people her age. I've got an 18-year-old son here trying to do his A-levels, and it's been really weird. So thank God they've gone back to school. I've got a 14-year-old, and it's been, I think for these guys, for young people, I think for my son, he's had no 18th birthday parties, no rugby this year, sort of the things he was really looking forward to as a kid, just doing, and then trying to, sort his A-levels out and try and go off to university. It's all been a bit messed up for those guys. So it's been a very odd year for them, and I feel sorry for them, but I think they've had a tough time out of this. I know so many other people have, but I guess I know, looking at my 18-year-old son, I think they've missed out a lot in their final year. And then, of course, you know, I'm broadcasting from a shed in my garden, which is kind of highly weird. And although the tech works, it's like doing Zoom chats or Zoom interviews. It all works really well, but you miss something, you know. So being in my studio on my own, I've got no producer, no one to chat to. I've got no one to feed off. There's no other buzz coming. There's no one popping in your studio, or no salespeople wandering past, bringing guests in. There's no atmosphere. You've got to create your own atmosphere. And I think that's what's pretty hard about a lot of people will have found this. Obviously, as a broadcaster, you need energy to be able to broadcast, and you often feed off other people being around you and being part of your team to help create the buzz. But all kinds of people in different jobs, I know, will have found it. Lots of my friends who work in offices say, you know, it's great doing Zooms every day or meetings on Microsoft Teams, but actually where a lot of the work got done was the 5 minutes before the meeting or the 10 minutes afterwards, where you grab a coffee or you're wandering in and you're sort of in a way chewing the fat with people and just chatting about stuff. That's where you make relationships and where you I think you learn a lot about other people, and actually sometimes do a lot of business is outside of those meetings. So I think we're missing all that, the sort of social interaction with other humans that I have to say I'm desperately looking forward to again. I really am. So it has obviously affected it. Now there's light at the end of the tunnel. I'm so excited for everyone and for the country and for the world that we can actually come out of this awful dark tunnel and actually start living again. Just do normal things. You know,
we have a press conference at 5 o'clock today.
Yeah, well, you know, it's these, you know, the government, I mean, gosh, I know they've come under a lot of criticism, but my goodness, what a tough time to be a country when you've got no one's got any previous experience of anything like this before. And it's, you know, you look around the world at how different countries have tried to handle this situation. I think we've definitely got some bits right, and we definitely got some bits wrong. I think we've obviously got the rollout of the vaccine very right, and we're, you know, apart from Israel, we are really doing a brilliant job, sort of leading the world with it, and that's incredible because it means that, you know, the vulnerable people in our society can get out there again and start living. Because I think you know, I'm not a vulnerable person, but for all those people, you know, my mum's 92. She's been in an assisted living sort of home, and I haven't seen her for 6 months. You know, you kind of think, and for a lot of those people, they haven't literally been out for a year. I mean, I just can't imagine, or seen their family or had a hug from them. It's so hard. It's those really simple, small things in life. That's the good thing about the pandemic. It's made you maybe realize what's really important in life and what you really miss. So you look now and you think of all the things, what have I really missed in this last year? And I've missed really good friends, seeing them, giving them a hug, seeing how they are, seeing my mum, seeing my brothers, seeing your family, just the simplest of things. There's nothing material that I've missed. You know, it's not like I'm craving, I need a new car, I need the new this, I need the new that. It's not, you don't need that. It's just the simple things, isn't it, really?
Would you ever do reality TV again? A question from a friend of mine. And do you know when you used to do those phrases on Pop Idol?
Yeah.
My friend asked, was that
would I ever look? What kind of phrases are you talking about?
When you used to do those funny things in Pop Idol. My friend asked.
Well, look, I think what's interesting is on a reality show, well, a show like Pop Idol, you'd have to remember there hadn't been shows like Pop Idol before. So it was all very new. And we as judges weren't meant to be there in the live shows to start with. We weren't going to be there in the live shows. It was only after the first couple of episodes when people realized that the judges, we had a really good rapport together. And I think what's interesting is we were all very different people. So we brought different things to the show. And I guess part of the thing, maybe I brought to the show was those, sometimes that sort of weird, light-hearted bits, talking about, I suppose, stuff like, you know, you're a bit like a donut, you know, you're a bit like a donut and you look really lovely, but when I bit into you, I found no jam, right? Stuff, things like that. I suppose it's just having been a DJ, but Nikki obviously brought a certain, she had worked for record management, and Pete was a record producer, and Simon was a record executive, and I was a guy that played lots of stuff, and I picked records to play on the radio. So between the four of us, we had a really good understanding of what was probably going to work, who was going to be good. So I guess we all had our own things that we brought to the team and to the judging panel. And that's changed a bit, I think, over the years. Sort of what people are looking for in judges has definitely changed. But look, I certainly enjoyed it. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed doing Pop Idol. It was amazing. We only did 2 series of it, but it was brilliant. I don't think I'd be, I did do Dancing on Ice, and that was a bit of a dismal failure. Didn't do so well in that one. I think I'd much prefer to be a judge than to be a contestant on a reality show. I don't think I'd do that again. But I really enjoyed it. So yeah, look, if the right thing came along, and obviously it would be something to do with music, because that's what I know a lot about, and that's part of my life. Yeah, I'd love to do it. It was really good fun. And particularly if you get to work with good people. You know, you have to remember, at that time, I'd known Simon probably about 10 years when we did that. I'd known him really well. I knew him as just a record executive because he hadn't been on TV doing a show like that before either. And I knew Pete we had a very good relationship with Stock Aitken Waterman and Pete Waterman, particularly as such amazing record producers. So I knew him, and I knew Nikki from management. I knew her from, she used to be a record plugger. Her job was to come around and bring musicians and artists around to radio stations and TV stations. So I'd met her lots of times then. So I knew these guys. We were friends. So I think that's partly why we got on so well as well. We kind of all knew each other and also respected each other. They were all very good at what they did.
Pete Waterman actually produced one of my celebrity crushes' first albums, Kylie Minogue.
All right. Well, my God, I tell you, when you look at the amount of records that Stock Aitken Waterman wrote, produced, and created, it's unbelievable. Actually, my goodness, they were some of really, you know, the greatest in terms of numbers of hit songs they've had. Was incredible.
Yep. Question 5. What advice? The last question on the list. Sorry, I've been a long time. We've been chatting quite a bit.
No. I'll keep it a short one for you.
What advice would you give to young aspiring broadcasters who are starting out?
Right. Well, I think the hardest thing when you start out is trying to find out who the real you is as a broadcaster. And that takes a bit of time. And you've got to try and work out. So if you've worked out you want to be on the radio, you've got to work out what kind of radio station you want to be on. And then if you think, oh, I'm going to be a music DJ, I'm going to be on a music station, you've got to work out what kind of music DJ you're going to be. Are you going to be the informative type that really is like a muso that really understands their music and is picking out new songs? Are you going to be someone who is just having some fun in between, like a personality radio jock? What are you going to be? And who are you going to be? Because the hardest thing on the radio is to be real. And that's what you really want to be. You want to be you on the radio, or maybe a slightly more exaggerated version of you. But what you don't want to be is fake on the radio, so that when you turn up and people meet you, they kind of go, oh, I used to really like him on the radio, but he's so different in real life. You want to try and be a real person. So I would say, the advice I would give young aspiring broadcasters is to keep it simple to start with. Just try and get as much experience wherever you can, and listen to a lot of radio. But yeah, keep it simple to start with, and kind of, it's like building blocks radio. You know, you need to, like everything, you need to start with good foundations, and then you need to work out what you're going to be, and try and experiment and have some fun, and always record every show and listen to it back. Because that way you'll hear all your bad habits, and you'll hear what you're doing right, and you'll hear what you're doing wrong. And maybe you can, when you hear bits that don't sound so good, maybe you can work on them to make them sound better. And things that do sound good, try and do more of them. So, you know, if you don't listen to yourself back, you'll have no idea. You know, you'll hopefully be your best critic. But so, yeah, record everything, listen to it back, be super critical of yourself. And you know what? And try and get feedback from other people. And if they say negative things, don't don't be upset about it. You know, if you try and get constructive feedback from people, because all feedback, whether it's good or bad, is useful as long as you take it that way. Because what you're trying to do is get better and better and better. And still now, like, I've been a DJ since 1984. I think I did my first proper radio show. So that is, you know, we're coming up, that's 37 years I've been doing this. You know what? I'm hoping that today will be the best show I've ever done. I'm still hoping that, you know, every day it gets a little bit better. And every day I can learn from yesterday's show, and yeah, I can still keep getting better. Because the day that you want to stop doing this is the day that you don't try anymore, and you think, oh yeah, I can do that, I'm great. You need to, and I think the more experience you get, the more you know you can probably knock out a pretty good show every day without having to do much thought or much preparation. But still, if I'm going on the radio every day, I do work, I do preparation, and I try and make today's show better than yesterday's. And that's always good for young aspiring broadcasters. But don't try. I listen to a lot of tapes from aspiring broadcasters. They just try and be too clever. And you kind of go, yeah, that old expression, try to run before you walk, is very true. And I think people need to, yeah, just take it slowly and build and get experience. Wow. And with that, I've got to say, Ben, I've got to fly, because I've got to go and do something in 5 minutes' time that I need to do a bit of preparation for.
I'm going to wrap up.
So it's been very nice speaking to you.
I'm just going to wrap up the interview. Thank you very much for joining us here, Neil, on the Chatterbox podcast.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for being a lovely host, Ben.
Do join me for another podcast. I'll have broadcaster Ross Carrick next time, but now please give it up for the legendary Dr. Neil Fox. Thank you very much for listening, and that's a wrap.
That was Neil Fox talking about his career and his life. Hope you enjoyed that one. We'll have more very soon. But for now, like, subscribe, and as I always say, that's a wrap. Be out.